Hi, welcome to Books to Boardrooms with Dr. Kiran. Today I have the privilege of having Dr. Anuraag. Dr. Anuraag is specialized in a very interesting field of family business. And you know, in this part of the world, especially in the Middle East, there are quite a lot of family businesses. So I thought I will invite him to speak in depth about how the family business can sustain, how can they grow, and what sort of service he offers to this community so that their business can continue and grow. Thanks a lot, Dr. Anurag. Before I could get into this family business and the service what you guys offer, can you just give a little background about yourself? I know that you have double PhD in two different fields of management and technology. So I would like you to give me a little background about yourself.
Thank you, Kiran. And I think this is probably the fastest transition from an event to a podcast because I met you day before yesterday in a very interesting event, right? And from there, I am here today talking to you because we had a good chat on that day. And I also, before I talk about myself, I have to talk about I like this B2B, which is books to boardroom, because that's exactly how I have transitioned a little bit. Obviously, it's been a bit of books, then boardroom, and then again books to unlearn what was learned in the past and new, and then again boardroom. So it's learning is a constant exercise, right? My background, I would say, pretty interesting from the perspective that I'm an ex-Air Force fighter pilot. That's where I started. My father was also flying for the Air Force, so I pretty much have lived at many places in that area. So I am a little bit prone to risk because my flying thing was too risky, did not take off too well, and I thought I have to fly on the ground then. And that's where I did my first MBA from a prestigious business school, and then got into the industry. So I have been in the Middle East and Gulf for about 26, 27 years now. And I have been involved with some of the top large family business groups based in UAE, Qatar, Saudi and Oman. I have lived in all these four countries. Typically, a family business structure here is that they are into multiple industries. Some are into 20, 25 different industries, as a result of which you get a very good exposure of multiple industries. And also, because the market size relatively is smaller here, which is why any family business would be geographically diversified into multiple countries. So you have a very, very nice blend of geographical and vertical and horizontal expansion in family businesses, right? So while I was involved at C levels and even at board level in various family businesses, I subsequently also realized that there are some hidden issues with family businesses as they grow rapidly and fast, and they have a particular pattern of working. So with which I then moved into consulting with a global auditing accountant consulting firm to specially focus on family businesses and their problems and to help them out with how they can transition into becoming sustainable business.
I think that's really interesting when you say family business. And just before we start shooting, you told about there's a corporate business like the large multinationals, and then you talk about the family business. So what do you typically call as a family business? How you define that? Okay, this is the family business.
Pretty much you would say actually the origin of every business is originating from some family itself. So every business starts as a family business, and subsequently some of them will then become a listed company, right? And then they become a business which changes its dynamics. But where the business is still driven by the founders or driven by the family members of the founder are typically family businesses, right? Who do not sell their shares out to out in the open market. Now, globally, as well as in this part of the world also, almost 90% of the businesses are family businesses, right? Whether you fall under SME category or MSME category or large, medium or large scale businesses, but they are all family businesses. Even in many countries, all the major businesses which you can think of on your names are all family businesses, right? Because they are founder driven. So, which is the answer to your question as to what family businesses are.
So they basically don't go into listing, they just keep it with themselves and all. But during one of the conversation you told that when the family business, when it moves from first generation, the founder who started it, to the next generation, there's a chance that 70% of the businesses die in that stage, and when it goes from the second generation to third generation, the sustaining business is only 10% compared to what the owners have started. So is that an opportunity what you've seen to get into that, to has to sustain these business models for a long period of time? I think that's what you're specializing into.
So you got the numbers right. Yes, 70% of the family businesses don't make it to second generation, and only 10% make it to the third generation. And that happens because of certain visible reasons, which is exactly the reason why I also ventured into starting to assist large family businesses, because these statistics were alarming. Why? Because family businesses employ a lot of people, right, and contribute a lot to the economy. So any disruption in a business is also an impact on employment of people, has an impact on economy, right? And we have, I won't take names, but we know in the region there are quite a few names of family businesses which have disintegrated, right? Now, why this happens? One, obviously, the founders or chairmen of these businesses started these businesses long back, and any family business which started as an opportunity business. Somebody identified an opportunity, somebody was willing to take the risk, so they jumped in, they worked hard, and they created, and from one to another, all interrelated businesses started coming up, and that's how businesses grew. And they grew in revenue, in geography, in the number of people they employ. But what happens is that this founder who started this business, his key competency was identifying opportunity and taking the risk of building it, right? But over a period of time, this business became so big that it required more people management, process management, rather than leaving time with the founders to go about scouting for new opportunities, business, or taking new risks. And if the founder does not create a strong governance structure around it, or a strong pool of people to manage, it becomes too much of a burden. I have heard chairmen telling me, Anuraag, I can't say this to anybody, but it looks like I have become the slave to my own employees, because they don't work for me, I work for them all the time, because I'm only solving their problems and conflicts and this and that, and it's taking a lot of my energy. And obviously with age, since they are growing older, they cannot put the same amount. So it limits their growth, and it puts that organization into extreme amount of risk. Which is why at a certain stage, it requires that organization to shift from people driven to process driven, right? People dependent to process dependent. Yeah.
I think that's the main thing in terms of when it was morally family owned businesses, and the founder runs the business, he takes decisions, everything depends on him, and that's at one point when he start, he's happy to do that with a lot of energy and passion. But over the age, he might get tired for that everything he need to take. So is that where you come into the picture in terms of these businesses appoint you in the board, so that you can understand the business, and then you bring in process, governance, procedures, so that the organization can run with a certain multinational or a corporate model? Is that what you basically do?
So let me tell you one more thing, which is also important here, is that one is that dependency on people more than processes, which is one issue, and at certain stage it requires these family businesses to become, I won't say corporate, because it's very difficult for them to adopt a corporate culture, but become a semi-corporate, right? And a semi-corporate structure requires that there are more decision makers than one. Why? Because the founder's decision making is more emotion driven, right? Because there is an emotional attachment to business. So whatever said and done, there will always emotions which will flow in when you take decisions. But sometimes you take professional decisions. You have to put the right professional people in place to do that. So my role primarily comes in is to identify where the problems are sitting across the organization, and there are various things which happen. Obviously, I call myself a family business doctor, right? So just like a patient goes to a doctor only when he starts developing symptoms and pain areas, these businesses also come to me when they are already in a certain degree of problem. Problems could be people management, not having the right structure of people, too much diplomacy, politics, revenues are not growing, profits are shrinking, yeah, some businesses are completely dying, not able to fight competition, right? There are so many weak areas which come up, financial cash flow problems, market intelligence issues, or they have become like white elephants, right? They are no longer that agile, agility is not there. All this happens because the growth is so rapid, very high inventories, very high receivables in the market. Multiple problems can be there. So the idea is to, my methodology primarily is that I meet almost 80% of the people in that organization, and not only I meet the top people last, I start from the bottom. Because there's a lot of information which comes to you even from a driver who goes and delivers a product, or a person sitting in a warehouse, or a technician, or a retail store guy. Yeah, and then you move up the ladder and you meet the mid managers, meet the senior management, you understand the founders, the family members, this, and then from there it's about creating a list of actionable points which will eradicate those key problems. Yeah, and then my methodology, I create task forces for each of the action points from within the organization, which is a blend of people from multiple departments. It may not be their core competency area. A guy from marketing may be involved in a finance related action point, right? But there will be a cluster. So what that does is, it brings a strong harmony between the various teams in working together, right? There is, and because in this whole process people are involved from day one, there is an acceptance already that any change which is going to happen, they are going to be a part of that change. It is their success, their failure. So it is not somebody coming in from outside with a thought process and trying to impose it, because that doesn't work. That's the biggest failure.
I think that's a very interesting point. I think in most of the cases when an external agency comes, basically they don't involve the employees, and employees get a shock, and then they don't adapt to these changes, and then the model fails, and then their investment of bringing the consultants fails in that. But bringing even involving the people, so they become part of the decision making, and they feel that it's their decision, so they need to make it successful. That's the great idea. You told about all the challenges which are supposed to ask in terms of what are the challenges which a family business at certain point of time face, wherein they come to people like you to sort out these issues. Now, one of the other thing which, when you talked about identifying inefficiencies or challenges within the organization, is fine. At one point of time, the founder itself will accept these findings and say, yeah, these are the problems I am facing. But then the biggest challenge for you can be also how you change the mindset of these founders itself, to say that, okay, what he or she is doing is wrong, and how to rectify those. How do you find resistance in terms of the accepting that, because they always can say, see, I know I did it, I made it to this level, now you are coming and telling me I am wrong. That type of feedbacks I've seen some of these owners are having. How you overcome those challenges? Do you face such challenges?
So that is 100% you are right. Because what also happens is that when you grow a business to a particular level, there is also a certain degree of ego which comes in, which means that I have done it, I know it all, right? And then when you stop listening, then it starts creating the problem. But like I said, generally businesses would come to me at a stage where they already have a problem. So already certain degree of acceptance has come in that we need a change, right? So that is there. However, I also explain the role what the founder will have to play in this whole process, because he is very crucial, not on his involvement and making the change, but in being able to send the right message across to the team. To the extent that even the first mail of before you start an exercise like that is drafted for the chairman to go across to his people as to how they contribute to this, how it is their success, right? So because you want absolutely no resistance in this whole process, right? And for them to believe that it is for them, and because every person will only contribute. You can't ask somebody to do something unless the person, you can answer to the person's question as to what is in it for him or her, right? How does he or her benefit? He can understand the organization will benefit, but how do they individually benefit? And if this message is understood by everyone, they are become a part of the solution, not the problem. So, sometimes the question which comes to me from chairman founders is that, Anuraag, I have such a large team of senior people who have been with me for years. They are here, they have brought me to this situation where I am today. Situation means both in success as well as where the problem may be. So, how are you going to change their mindset to become acceptable to this? And that's the larger part of the problem. And that's where I say, see, today they are here, and they also, because they've been with you for years, they are not going to go anywhere on their own unless you ask them to leave, right? So, if they have to remain, they should also understand where the organization is today, and it will no longer be sustainable, which will be a threat to their own employment or contribution if they don't correct the things at this stage, right? If they correct, they continue on this journey in a more successful manner, right? So, the program is defined in such a manner that I would conduct strategy workshops, where I would, the problems will come from them, the solutions will come from the teams itself, they will work on it, right? Obviously under a guided path, so that everyone is contributing, because you want, and it's a mix of different departments all put together who work on specific objectives. So from day one it is their success story, and ultimately they are the ones who then present to the board. They present how they went about it, what is it they want to do at every stage. There is a program where they would present to the board, these are our, how we are taking it, this is it. And when they present, they own this, they are doing it with a lot of belief in this, right? So obviously they cannot let it fail.